I'm revisiting an old subject today, and I felt like it was one that needed to be revisited in a slightly more intellectual way. Rings of Power costume design is atrocious, and there is no way around that. It looks cheap, it looks unfinished, and I think we need to take more of a look at it. You have a $1 billion TV show that's putting main cast members in sewn together fake printed chainmail, gold lame, items that obviously don't fit or are not intended for the actors that are wearing them. You have pieces that look completely out of place. You have pieces that, oddly enough, bear more of resemblance to the scriptures in Narnia than anything Tolkien ever wrote. And then you look at those cheap, weightless pieces next to things like Game of Thrones, The House of the Dragon, even the original Peter Jackson trilogy. I will pick on Game of Thrones, and it definitely has its ups and downs with some of its costume design. There is no way around that. But, and the House of the Dragon is a prime example of this too, the costumes have weight. They move, they fit, they're obviously intended for the actor wearing them. They have weight to them. The weaponry has weight as well, but props is a whole different discussion. The costumes in Rings of Power look so light and not in a nice elven way. I mean light in a cheap way. I mean, even Xena Warrior Princess, that was probably produced on a shoestring budget, looks better in many retrospects than Rings of Power. The costumes look in keeping with what they're doing. House of the Dragon, again, those costumes are gorgeous, heavy weighted fabrics, heavy armor. They have weight to them, and obviously some are probably made quite cheaply and quickly, but there is a way of doing it. Once Upon a Time, a TV show, did beautiful costume work, but you can make light pieces, you can make cheaper pieces, you can make things done on a budget look really good. And this is where we come into the cosplayers. I've seen people cosplaying Rings of Power in pieces that look 1,000 times better than the Rings of Power costume. I mean, someone did Galadriel's armor, or Galadriel as we like to call her, and you know what? The piece they designed was spectacular. It was heavy, it was detailed. It was made out of foam rubber. Quite literally made out of foam rubber. And it was beautiful, and I mean that. I don't get how a $1 billion TV show can create something that looks so cheap. Everything has... Everything is lacking that thing that makes things look real and lived in and heavy and worn. Everything looks too synthetic, too artificial, and I mean putting elves in gold lame. Come on. I did costume design and a bit of fashion design in college, and I will say this, like, it's not my specialty, but I know the basics. I know how to make things look lived in. I've done cosplay for people. I've done cosplay for myself and created some beautiful things. It's not difficult. And when you can see the seams in the chainmail, because it's printed on snail mail, it looks terrible, let's be real. There is a problem with that. And there is a huge problem with that. The more generic characters look very generic fantasy and don't feel in keeping. The costumes are so generic between the characters that often you look at them and think, what the hell is going on? I mean, there's one costume that's literally a pair of my great-grandmother's velvet curtains. And what was that? I mean, there is some really weird decisions going on with the design here, but in fairness, I can see what they were trying to do, but I don't get why it looks so cheap. I can see the mood they were trying to create and the look they were trying to create. It was less grounded in reality and more focused on the fantasy elements. But the problem with that is, it looks cheap. I have bought pieces on Wish, aged them up, and made them look spectacular. I know people that have done far better work than me with cheap pieces that are dropshipped from China. There is a way of doing this, that to create things on a shoestring, and I pick on Once Upon a Time, which is a guilty pleasure TV show of mine. The fairy tale costumes look expensive, they look lived in, they look like they fit the actors. I don't get how hardly any of the armor fits the actors, and I do understand on extras, background people, and so on, printing stuff on fabric because they're not in the main shot, they're in the distance. But why are the main actors in this stuff? Why do helmets look like they could break if you touch them? Why does everything look like plastic? Because they did it cheap. And it shows. The costumes of this show have always been, like, my big criticisms of this show have always been the writing. Like, that's something from the get-go. My criticisms of the writing. You can change stuff, you can do whatever, but writing. But then you start delving into the aesthetics, and you look at the sets, you look at the costume design, you look at the props, you look at all of this stuff, and it feels so budget. There are fan films of Lord of the Rings on the internet, on YouTube, that look far better than this. There is a way you can make beautiful costume pieces that look real. You can hide seams, you can cover things up, you can put, if you don't want to go to full chainmail, you can use little pieces just to hide things, anything visible. There is a way of doing it, and they didn't do it. These costumes feel like someone did it on a 3D printer. I know a hell of a lot about armor, especially going back from I want to say, Renaissance and back into the ancient world. The ancient world is a bit of a study point of mine and a bit of an obsession. Armor should fit the people wearing it. It shouldn't be a crop top. And I mean, the Numenorians, and I know Numenor is definitely inspired by Atlantis. That's very much an obvious thing. But why? Like, it was Greek overload. It was a pitch-podge of Greek and weird medieval pieces that looked out of place. It's like they reused the costumes for different actors as well. Actually, in some shots, I'm sure they did. Let's be real. And it's fine reusing costumes, but come on, create something good. Create something that looks the piece. I mean, this is now nominated for Best Costumes, one of the award shows. The shills are having hard-ons as we speak. And all I'm thinking is, there are TV shows with far superior, far better looking costumes. And I actually, like I said, I see what they were trying to do. But why does it look so budget? Why does it look so unfinished? Why doesn't it fit anyone? Why do these costumes look like pieces from Wish that have had some paint put on them? Why are there seams where there should be chainmail on main characters that are front and center? Why did they use gold lame? Like, that's a horrible fabric. By the way, lame, through personal experience, is one of the hardest fabrics to put through a bloody sewing machine. It's frustrating. It's horrible. And I mean, it's a relic of the 70s, let's be real. Or gold member. But when you've got far superior looking costumes in other shows, the Emmy Award and everything that this is nominated for is the equivalent of patting Ralph Wiggum on the head and saying good boy because he didn't eat the glue during the school project. It's sad that this is what's becoming of it. It's not a TV show. It's content for a streaming service. That's being honest. And Amazon have cancelled shows to keep this thing going. So it's very telling. Internal leaks and drama amongst people, recasting, which also probably goes why a lot of the costumes don't fit people. It's just a mess of a production, and it's represented in its aesthetics and visuals. And that's kind of a shame. So tell me what you think in the comments below. I will talk to you guys later.